You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. I don't talk in real life about having hoarding disorder, so I talk about it on this podcast instead. And because I'm anonymous, I can talk really, really honestly. Subscribe to the podcast and find my social media links, episode transcripts, and every link that I mention at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you? I have a brilliant interview for you today, but before I introduce Laura Silverstein to you, or reintroduce because she's been on before, I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. So, the inaugural De-Hoarding Accountability Zoom session happened on Sunday, and it was so lovely. It felt like such a supportive environment because we were all working on something, knowing that other people were working on their homes as well, and there was like supportive chatter and there was convivial silence and people were offering each other advice, and it just felt really, really nice. I was so chuffed. One person even got up to join us at 4:30 a.m. Australian time. So I especially appreciated that, but it was great. And so I've booked some more in. And so if you would like to sign up to a De-Hoarding Accountability Zoom session, you can do so at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. This one last Sunday happened at 7:30 p.m. UK time, so evening UK time, which was kind of afternoon American Canadian time and silly o'clock in the morning Australian time. So some of the ones that you can get your ticket for are at that time. Others are morning UK time, which should cater to the Southern Hemisphere folks a bit better, hopefully. And so, yeah, come and join us. There's something so powerful about people in a room. Nearly everybody had their camera off, including me, but we just knew that the other people in there were there because they had the same issue. So we could talk quite freely about the weird stuff we found or the dilemmas we were having about the things that we were coming across. And it was really nice. So if you want to join in the next one, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. Now the interview with Laura. So I am here with Laura Silverstein, who you may remember from episode 74. Laura is a couples therapist in Pennsylvania, and she is the author of Love is an Action Verb and the Couples Therapy Workbook. She is a Certified Gottman Couples Therapist and has spent 30 years learning what makes long-lasting love and what leads to slow, steady relationship decline. When she was last on the podcast, Laura gave some brilliant advice about couples and hoarding, and there was such good information about communication in particular, and also balancing both partners' perspectives. And so I was really thrilled when she agreed to come back on. So this time we're going more specific. What on earth do you do if you are not a hoarder and you live with your partner who hoards? How do you negotiate that as a couple when both people might look like they've got competing needs? But first of all, Laura, how are you?
I'm doing very, very well. And I'm just so happy to be here. I had such a great time last time and was so thrilled that you wanted to do this again. So thank you for inviting me back.
Thank you for coming. So this topic is really interesting because it seems to me like it covers several of the areas you're brilliant on, especially...
I don't know about brilliant, but...
Oh, I don't know. I'd say so. Especially communication and understanding how something is affecting your partner as well as yourself. But we're also going to delve into the practical side of things. How do you deal with living in a way you're not comfortable with? And how do you make progress that works for both halves of a couple? So, from your point of view, what do you think and what do you hear from clients are the main issues affecting somebody who lives with somebody who hoards?
Yeah, so this is such a great and challenging topic
It is.
because the challenge is for the non-hoarding partner to try to understand just why their partner isn't able to just quote unquote do it like Nike. They just can't. And that amount of patience, whatever degree of patience they feel like they're offering, it comes to an end. And I think then that can have such a hurtful impact on both parties, because then the hoarding partner, can feel guilty or defensive or misunderstood. And then conflict can come up as a result of that, and probably will, no matter what. And one of the things that I remind every single person in the world, whether you're in a relationship, not in a relationship, that 100% of close relationships have conflict. Conflict is not bad. Conflict is about difference. Differences are diversity, right? We want nuance in the world. We want to understand differences. We don't want to just, agree to disagree and not really understand the depth of what is someone else is passionate about, or what's important to them. So anyway, so that's a little bit of a tangent to say that conflict, right? 100% of couples have conflict. And so conflict is not the problem. You are not going to successfully never ever have a fight about, this stuff in your space. And by the way, that doesn't matter if you have a hoarder in a relationship or not. I've yet to meet a couple where this doesn't have come up.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is emptying the dishwasher, apparently. How to that there's a correct way, many people believe, of how to load a dishwasher, how to empty a dishwasher, and so, forget about sex and politics and, money issues, like sharing a home with somebody is a huge challenge. So I think the first thing is to normalize the fact that, conflict is not something to be afraid of. We don't want to feel like, oh no, we're in a bad relationship if we had a disagreement, or if my partner hurt my feelings, or I hurt my partner's feelings, that's it. This is not okay. The work, and what we know from the research, is that it's all about repair. It's about repair. It's about, when you do have conflict, how are you really making sure that you understand the depth of somebody else's experience, why they feel the way that they feel, and that both people are speaking their truth, and both people are making their needs known, and both people are also listening to the other partner's truth and working to try to make the other person's needs known. So that's kind of the scaffolding. But let's think about how to get deeper with this specific topic.
And just tying into what you were saying about conflict, not arguing doesn't mean there's no conflict either, does it? I feel like conflict can be expressed by passive aggression or by moodiness. It's not like if you never argue, everything is fine.
Right, exactly. And sometimes there's functional ways to deal with conflict that are not necessarily sitting down and having a 1 hour conversation. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm sorry, babe. And the other person is like, oh, thanks. And there's a kiss on the forehead. Sometimes the repair can be very, very simple. It's not acknowledging it at all that it becomes problematic. That's the thing where we just want to be careful. If we're noticing that something's still bugging us, it's knocking on our door, and we're just like pushing it down, that's where, unfortunately, if we don't address it, it could turn to resentment, or it can turn into kind of having more of a transactional relationship than a loving partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is this phenomenon in many relationships where early on your partner has a little quirk or something and you think it's cute, and then 2 years later you want to kill them when they do exactly that.
Exactly.
And I wonder if, oh, he's a bit messy, he's just a creative type at the start of a relationship, 2 years later can look very different.
Oh, 100%. And it's good to remember that. It's good to remember that oftentimes we fall in love with differences because we want to strive to be more like other people sometimes, and we're like, oh, like, my life is so sterile, and to be around this artistic, creative, messy person, is kind of romantic in the beginning, and then when that very mess gets on your nerves and you want to strangle somebody, then you remember, like, oh yes, like this is something that is really super annoying, right? I'm not going to say just be like, oh, be so grateful that they're creative. It's like, yeah, it's annoying, and that's part of like normalizing that it's okay to be annoyed at your partner, and as long as you're expressing it respectfully, yeah, people get annoyed at their partners, and so it doesn't feel as big if you're like, oh no, what have I done? I thought this was great that they were creative, and now I'm finding out they're messy, and what have I done? And is it a huge problem? Versus like, it really annoys me when I see how messy that sink is, and then there's not as much judgment.
Yeah.
When we feel our feelings, and they're kind of, we're not afraid of them, and we're not like pushing them down, then they're just kind of like out there with a little bit less, I don't know another way to say judgment. That's the word that comes to my mind, right? It comes out as judgy if you feel like it's terrible that you're angry, and therefore you wouldn't be angry if the person wasn't doing this terrible, horrible thing. Where the reality is, you're going to be angry when you're in love, period.
Yeah. And if a person is listening to this because they live with a hoarding partner, they've presumably hit a point where it is really bothering them.
Yeah.
But they are also presumably listening because they want their relationship to improve.
Right.
So where's a good place to start?
So I think noticing both of those parts of that dichotomy is I love that you put it out so clearly. And by the way, like, welcome listeners. Like, I love that you're here trying, thinking about, I mean, that's such a lovely, lovely thing to think, okay, well, I have a partner who has this particular challenge, and I'm going to learn more by listening to this podcast. That's just a really generous, loving thing to do. So, congratulations for being here, I guess, number one.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
But so first is, yeah, normalize. It's okay to be angry, and you still get to ask for what you need, right? So you might think, okay, like, I'm in love with somebody who has this challenge. And my guess is that somebody who's with a hoarding partner has insight into the fact that there may be reasons why that they've shared. Sometimes there's a chemical component in one's brain that there's an OCD component to hoarding, which is, more and more evidence just coming back to the fact that you inherit that with your body the same way you're a certain height. And so there's different ways of thinking about it. If it's, if somebody is challenged in that way, a partner might think, oh, I can't ask somebody to be 3 inches taller because that'll be easier to grab the cutting board, right? So they might think, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask for what I need because I'm trying to be a loving, generous partner. Well, I would say, and this is all hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, I think number one is being able to have a conversation about it. I do agree with what you said before about, this is what I do. I help people with communication, and It might not feel all that fun or sexy to like sit down and talk, but what it does is it will save you a heck of a lot of time, right? So getting certain really solid communication skills under your belt in your relationship, what you'll find is you have actually more time instead of less time, because it gets a lot more concise as you keep doing it. So if you're finding that you've asked for something that you're not getting, the first thing is to reach out to your partner and say, hey, like, when's a good time for you and I to talk in the next day or two? And so number one, I'm always a believer in making sure that both people are in their best state of mind for a potentially challenging conversation. This is the importance of prevention, whereas many times things come out when we're annoyed because we've just on our last nerve and we just hit every last red light. And that's when we decide to bring up, the dishes in the sink. So instead, it's being calm, being grounded, and scheduling a conversation. And scheduling doesn't have to be with everybody getting out their 5 million calendars. It could be like, how about tomorrow? Do you want to have breakfast?
Yeah.
Do you want to go for a walk? So number one, schedule the conversation. And sometimes that makes people nervous. They're like, oh no, are you breaking up with me? So you don't want to be too like, you don't want to be like too vague about it. Just like, hey, can we talk a little bit about how we're dividing the tasks in the home? Or a little bit about and chances are this is already something that's come up. It's not the first time, but hey, can we sit down and revisit some of the challenges that we've worked through before? And so that they don't think that you're planning to dump them, on the walk, because then it's really hard. So then after that, right, then you follow up. And so when, you're halfway there by being calm and having your heart rate below 100 beats per minute, when you're having a conversation, means that you're not in a state of fight or flight. And so it's hard to have difficult conversations for all people, even, people who do this for a living. My partner and I don't always use the best language, and we're both couples therapists, but it's it's not because we don't know what we're supposed to be saying. It's because we're not doing it at the right time. That's when you get into trouble. So you're halfway there if you're calm and relaxed. If you're flooded, you can't have the conversation because you don't have access to your frontal cortex. And your partner probably, even if they start off with it, if you're coming in hot, 96% of conversations end the way they start. So if you come in hot, then you're probably likely to get a really, really defensive response. If you come in with a generous, loving, patient tone, you increase the likelihood, and I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but you increase the likelihood that your message is going to be received from the vein that it's intended, which is, I love you and I want to figure this out in a way that both of our needs are getting met. So let me just pause there. Is that making sense, or do you have any responses?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I imagine that if it's got to this point where this conversation needs to happen, first of all, I had to say to my boss at work, please don't send me a message saying, can we have a meeting at 3, full stop. I need to know, can we have a meeting at 3 about whatever it is?
Yes. Right. Because you're like, I'm getting fired.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting fired. Yeah.
So I don't spend the whole day waiting to be fired. And similarly, you can say, there's a thing we need to talk about. We need to talk about the house. Let's not go into it now, but let's talk in the morning. And that way, yeah, they're not lying awake waiting to be dumped. I think also, chances are, this isn't the first time this conversation has happened, and it perhaps didn't go so well last time.
Right.
And so if the conversation is usually heated, with one person getting insistent, the other person digging their heels in, how do you have that conversation in a different way?
Yep. So most conflicts, the most common negative communication pattern is an attack defend communication pattern, where somebody is not intending to attack the other person, but they have something really, really important they want to say. And they say it in such a way that it comes out with an edge or it lands as an attack. I talk about like this pattern of sort of this attack defend pattern. And that's how most fights start. So the person who's starting the conversation, the more skilled that they can be, the less likely that their listener is going to perceive what they're saying as a personal attack. Okay. And so if it's gone poorly in the past, I would be thinking, okay, if I'm starting a conversation, then the onus of responsibility is on me to be as positive about the positive stuff as I possibly can. So happy relationships, the research shows, have a 20-1 positive to negative ratio. So that's a lot, and in corporate language, they talk about the, poop sandwich. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yes.
That's really nasty. But they're onto something, right? That human beings, right, need to feel appreciated, noticed, acknowledged for the fact that we have the best intentions, even when we make mistakes and mess up. So when the speaker is starting the conversation, the more that they can focus on the positivity of who their partner is, why they love them, why this conversation is really important. And I think it might be good to acknowledge, I know we've talked about this in the past, and I haven't always done a very good job of bringing things up in a way that's been, maybe I think I come across as critical sometimes. I'm really trying to work on that. I really see how much you've been working, and I really see how incredibly difficult it is for you to get rid of things, or to, I see that I saw all those things you donated last week, but I also saw the pain of just how challenging that was for you. So none of that is lost. So these are examples, but whoever's doing this, it has to be authentic. It can't be just like, oh, I listened to a podcast and they told me to be positive, so I'm like, it has to be like really things that you truly, truly appreciate and love about your partner and see them working on. And the benefit of doing that is then it's like you're talking to somebody as if you love them, not training somebody who's doing something wrong or bad.
I read an article about how to have difficult conversations, and they put together a formula that sounds quite similar to what you're saying, and it's called I like, I wish, I wonder. And so you start with I like our relationship. We laugh a lot. We have so much fun. I wish I didn't feel quite so suffocated in the house because there's a lot of stuff and I don't feel so free. I wonder if we could work together on something, or have a conversation that doesn't end in us hating each other.
Yeah. What I love about that, I've never heard that before, but what I love about that is it shows the consistency, because when you start doing research and you're, whatever field any of us are in, so research tends to replicate, right? If solid research is good research, then you're going to find different research bodies replicating the same kind of study in different ways with different populations, and they're going to find the same thing. And so I love that you just said that, because what I teach couples is through John Gottman's research. He happens to be the person that I study under, but as long as you're going under somebody that knows what they're doing, they're going to find pretty much the same results. And so what I teach is called a gentle startup, and it's I feel blank, and then the third word is an emotion. The third word is not like or that or as if. The third word is not you. I feel you are not
Wrong.
doing what you said you were going to do. I feel that you are wrong. So the third word is an emotion. I feel emotion about the situation without using the word you. And then you follow up with a request. And my need or request is blank. So my need or request is that and then you ask for a behavioral asks, one thing that somebody can do that's going to be moving that tiny little needle a tiny little bit to show your partner, you matter to me. I know this is important to you. I want it too. I like, I love, I wonder.
I like, I wish, I wonder.
Right. And the wonder, I like, right. So it's, I like is starting with the positive and with a gentle startup, the very nature of the intervention is that it's focused on a strength-based perspective, that you're leading with the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead though. You were going to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that people might be thinking, well, like, hoarding is a mental illness. They can't help it. I am bad for wanting things to be different. And I think it's important that we say that both partners in a relationship have needs, and it is fine to not be happy living somewhere you can't move around, or living somewhere that you can't clean, or living somewhere that you can't have friends around. And it is fine to not be happy with that and to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's authentic, right? It's inauthentic to pretend that you're okay with something, which isn't really the kind thing to do for the partner who's struggling with hoarding, because whether it's a mental illness or it's family of origin stuff or trauma related or loss, separation and loss. I mean, there's so many things. And I love the empathy. I love, that people can see the depth to, why don't you just, right? A sentence that starts that way. But in a relationship, where this is something that's already out there and been problematic, then I completely agree that the topic's already, it's already reared its head. The question is, have you talked about it? And if so, like, were both of you given equal value to the fact that you want things too, and that you're also in pain, right? So then listening to that person's pain and having that kind of transparency will help both partners feel motivated to try to give the other person what they want, not out of an act of just defiance of like, fine, I'll do it, but more being like, oh, I see you're in pain and I want to soothe your pain because I care about you.
And I think there is strength in saying, the reason I need things to change is because I really want us to work. It's not because I am digging my heels in about living a particular life. It's that I want us to be able to stay together, and this is kind of tripping us up at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really, really nice thing to have as context of why are we having this conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
And that it's not fair not to bring it to somebody's attention if it's a potential deal breaker in the relationship, give them a chance to be part of that dialogue. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. If you're enjoying the podcast, if you're learning new things, and if you want to show your support, you can become a De-hoarding darling. De-hoarded darlings get exclusive access to extra insights, recommendations, a Spotify de-hoarding playlist, and additional answers from interviewees. Find out everything you need to know at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. In terms of the practicalities, I would want to start by saying, don't ever get rid of your partner's stuff when they're not looking. However tempting that may be, you might think, oh, she'll never notice but they will feel betrayed, and the reaction will most likely be to cling even harder onto the remaining stuff.
Yes.
But in terms of negotiating, making some progress in the home, what is the best way to approach that in practical terms? Is it best to try and do it together? Are there kind of best practices in that kind of area?
The way that I would approach it wouldn't be that I am the owner of that information, of the best practices of how to do it. I would think 100% supporting what you're saying about the potential betrayal that it would be to have a plan that doesn't include the person.
Yeah.
So look, I'm a couples therapist through and through, right? So I always have the belief that the wisdom lies within the two people who need to find the solution.
Sure.
They have that wisdom. But if they're afraid to have the conversation and they're afraid to be honest with each other, then their wisdom is then eclipsed by fear. So if you're starting to do something behind your partner's back, I want to kind of really reiterate what you're saying, not only because of how the hoarder might feel, or the person who struggles with hoarding might feel, because yes, it's going to make you want to cling on tighter, but also the person who doesn't struggle with hoarding is then going to have this secret that they have to hold on to, and they might justify that secret of like, oh, like almost like I have the solution, and I'm not going to include my partner in the solution. And that's the risk of one person making a decision, right? So for me, as a couples therapist, to come in and say, hey, this is what you're going to do, that runs exactly the same risk of like, then you're either in compliance or defiance. And we want to be in cooperation. Does that make sense? Or am I getting a little too heady there?
No, it makes total sense. I think there will be couples where sitting down together with a pile and talking through, oh, I kind of want to keep this because, and oh, that's interesting, I didn't know you had that history with the item, and talking it through as you kind of do things would be perfect. I can see other couples where somebody would say, okay, I will get rid of stuff, but just leave me to it because I know I'll be stressed and I know I won't be at my best. And I think you're right. I think I try generally to avoid on the podcast being prescriptive about like, this is how you clean your kitchen, or this is how, and it's the same with this, isn't it? It's whatever you as an expert say, or I as a hoarder say, you've got two living individuals in a couple who work in their own way.
Right. I think the conversation starts before the solution, right? So it's a conversation. It's a conversation of, how are we going to do this? Would it be helpful for me to sit next to you and have you tell a story about this item before we put it in the bag for green drop? Would it be helpful to hire an external person? Because like you were saying, I can see a situation which I can see all those situations. I can see a situation which the person who suffers from hoarding wants their partner to sit next to them and kind of honor these items. And the other person is like, just absolutely wanting to just take it all. And then it just feeling like I could see how that could go really, really sideways really quickly too, depending on whether there's comfort and interest. Like there might be like, oh, look at this photo album. And I could see it being really, really tender. Or I could see it being like, sometimes, if you do have judgment, you're like, I can't believe you saved these socks. Like maybe your partner doesn't need to witness that, how hard it is for you to like hold that back.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because even as the hoarder in this hypothetical relationship, I know that I can be annoying when I start trying to justify keeping something. And I annoy myself with that. And I know that I'm sure I could annoy somebody else with those same justifications. And yeah, it's probably best to not see that if I don't want to then start associating that difficult feeling with getting rid of things. And there's so many kind of possibilities, aren't there?
Is there a world where you think that actually might be helpful, though, if we don't judge it with the word justification, right, which kind of has a negative connotation, but if you say, can I share with you what this item means to me, and then it's almost a way of memorializing it, because then you've had that conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, I think there can definitely be a benefit in that, because you feel it can feel like, okay, I have honored this thing, so now I can let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I read or heard a podcast, and they were talking about old photos, dealing with old photos. You know, all those, oh, that's my great great aunt June. Often people like inherit their mum's collection of old photos, and she'd inherited. And if you've got too many, and it was about not just choosing the meaningful ones and maybe scanning the others and getting rid, but also how some people, if they tell the story of the people in the photos or the story behind that photo, they've then created a new positive memory around that photo that allows them to then let it go, because it's come to life. First of all, it's not just a black and white blurry thing of somebody who may or may not be Auntie June, but also it's the living memory of having that conversation is more valuable than a dusty old photo that you never look at anyway.
Yes.
And so I think if both partners want to do that, it can be a really valuable process to go through, but either or both may or may not want to.
Exactly. And that's why I was saying, so that's really goes back to the wisdom is within the couple of being honest with each other around what you can do, what you're willing to do, and what you're not willing to do. Right. Sometimes we're like, and it could be that you find somebody else, that you have somebody who has a lot of time on their hands, a retired neighbor who would just love to hear your stories. And maybe that person, you bake them a cake or something, and they do this thing, and they sit with you for a certain amount of time. Like, I think when everybody's in their frontal cortex and it's not conflict in the middle of somebody being mad because they wanted to have a guest bedroom, like that's when the creativity comes, where they're thinking, oh, you know what, this would really be helpful to me, or I read this article, can I tell you about it? When both people are having that conversation, oh, that makes sense, now I understand it, right? So whereas if I think I'm going to keep coming back to that, it's like most of the time, the reasons people aren't accessing their creative solutions is because of fear of a hurtful conversation, not wanting to hurt their partner's feelings, not wanting to say something they regret. And so then by not having those conversations, they're having them at the wrong time. And of course, you alluded to this before, of course, if it really went badly the last time, then the motivation is going to be even lower to believe that it might be useful. And you might have two creative brains that come up with a great idea, that maybe wouldn't work for anybody else. Maybe it's turning the music on, I don't know, maybe it's playing Mamma Mia at the top of your lungs. I don't know. It could be. I think when couples are like, this is who I am and this is who I am, that's when the work happens. It's when they're afraid of hurting each other, that they're so afraid of stepping on each other's toes, that people aren't as authentic as they need to be in the times when they're calm, and then they're a little too honest or have a little too much of an edge at the times when they're not.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be interested to hear from you where the line is between, on the one hand, having a collaborative, communicative, loving approach, and on the other, having boundaries that you're not willing to cross. Because there was a story a few months ago, some Hollywood guy was accused of weaponizing therapy speak by trying to control what his girlfriend wore by saying, yes, but that's my boundary. And so,
Uh-huh.
and obviously that's not a healthy way to try and establish boundaries. But it is okay for people to have boundaries. How do boundaries work in a healthy way?
Oh yeah. So that boundary is set in that gentle startup that you and I were talking about. Like, so for you, you were using the word wonder, but it might even be beneficial to have it be a little bit tighter language. So it might be something like, I really need
Yeah.
this, and this. Do you think you can do that? And if not, how can how can we make this happen? Or and then, if we get to the point where we're setting boundaries and there's deal breakers, that's sad and that's scary. Nobody wants to be putting out a deal breaker, but we actually all of us have deal breakers. We just probably don't talk about them, right? You don't sit down and be like, everything's good as long as you don't murder anybody and like bury them in the backyard, like we're good. That's kind of an unspoken rule. Like,
Bury them elsewhere, please.
not in the rose garden. That's my boundary and I'm sticking to it. So having that boundary and deal breakers is not like, you can be committed to somebody and still have lines that are uncrossable. And I think that it's very important to be setting those boundaries from a clear mind, not from a place of punitive or ultimatum, but rather a place from, I need this to feel like myself. And then both people, the challenge that I have in my office is helping people make these decisions such that nobody's giving up their integrity in order to try to make sure that they're holding on to a relationship because they love somebody and they think they're wonderful. Because we have that hard work to do to look inside ourselves and say, okay, my partner is saying that they need this. They need this. Not they don't want this. Not that life would be even better if you would do this. No, they need this. We have to hold that word. Like, we don't throw the word need around. Okay. Like, most things are requests, but many times, not many times. Yeah. Like we have a sort of have a inner circle of core needs that we can communicate clearly and give our partner the opportunity to know what those core needs are so that they can decide, can I give you that core need without giving up my integrity or promising you something that I'm just incapable of doing? It's a hard conversation. It's not a fun one.
It is. And it's so fine to say, whatever else is going on, I need the bedroom to be peaceful. I need to walk into my bedroom and feel relaxed, not stressed. And for the partner to then, like you say, kind of think, is that something I am willing and able to offer? It's not a demand. It's kind of just laying out, this is what I need, without
Yeah.
that being, it's not about manipulating somebody or ultimatums. It's just a statement of need.
Yeah. Yeah. And to even take it one step further, I need a peaceful bedroom. But what behavioral, concrete change would need to happen for me to have that peaceful feeling? Right? Because the more clearly we can define boundaries, the more we're setting ourselves up and our partner up for success to be able to give us what we need.
Because my peaceful bedroom might be entirely different to your peaceful bedroom.
Yeah. What are you talking about? It's this beautiful blue paint on the walls, you know?
I like my football team bedding. You can tell it's a while since I've dated a boy. I don't know if they still do that. It was a thing in the 90s.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right. The big helmet on the pillow, right?
It feels important to say when a couple has this conversation, and if they start making progress, whatever that looks like to them, there will be ebbs and flows in that. It might look like there's an amazing start and then it stumbles, or it might look like a really slow, stuttering start and then it starts flowing. And I feel like with any kind of chronic, long-term, embedded issue, that's just how life works. And it feels important to name that progress can look different at different times.
Yes. It can be slow. It can be 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, then 8 steps forward. Yeah. Yeah. And having realistic expectations and looking at successes. But I also have had times where couples have had that very conversation, and one partner might be saying like we're making, I'm making progress, don't you see? And it's like, no, I don't see it. And it could be internal progress. I'm starting to envision why I want this room to be clean, or what it would look like if I cleared the basement, but they haven't done anything.
Yes. So for the other person, there's been no progress. Nothing's changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what to do if there's very different paces about something that's been agreed to. And those are conversations to keep having.
And again, it sounds like being more clear about what progress looks like so that that conversation can happen in a way where I know what they're expecting and they know what I'm not expecting. I know what they're hoping for and they know what I'm hoping for. Because like you say, if that's unspoken, then yeah, I could be thinking this is going brilliantly and she could be thinking this is the worst. Whereas naming it helps to meet in the middle somewhere.
Right. Then the partner's like, great, we decided this. And then the next day they're waking up and they're looking forward to seeing all the progress because they had a great conversation about it yesterday. And the other person was like, oh my gosh, look how great we did. We talked about it. That was exhausting. It was scary. It was so hard to even think about. And just that conversation, could be considered an exposure of like talking about the scary thing. So that's where it's like, let's schedule a follow-up meeting to make sure that the partner that needs a slower pace, is not feeling like their progress isn't being respected. And the partner who wants to keep moving forward is, that there's checkpoints and they feel like, okay, I'm not allowed to say anything until our, like I've agreed to kind of like sit on this and be a little bit more patient, and we'll talk about it at our conversation on Sunday, if they happen to decide to schedule a weekly check-in, which sometimes can be useful.
Yeah. There's something I wished I'd asked you last time, so I'm going to ask you this time.
Wow, you've got an incredible memory. I'm impressed.
And it's not unrelated to this conversation. If you are seeing a couple as a therapist, is the goal always for the couple to stay together?
Oh, no.
If you work with a couple, is it a failure if they break up, or is breaking up sometimes actually the right thing to do?
Oh, no. There's no failure is not breaking up, right? Speaking your truth respectfully, clearly and with kindness, that is a success. So I don't have a goal. I really truly don't, right? Maybe in the beginning I did,
Yeah.
like I thought a success was to save marriages, quote unquote, or like, it feels like it seems like it should be the goal, but it really isn't, because I now know what it's like to sit with a couple where they both know it's over, or one person knows it's over and they're devastated and they need support of how do you say so? How do you share this information that's going to be devastating for your partner to hear? Like, how do you get your best shot of doing that in a way that you look back and you feel like, I know it was horrible and I know that I hurt my partner, but I also can look back and know that I did the best that I could to do so with respect. So I see that as a huge success. Huge. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say huge.
Yeah.
But it kind of is, like, when the remarkable thing is when people do have the courage to to have those kinds of conversations in a context with a third party where they're allowing themselves to have the support and guidance, so that it's not a reactive decision, because many breakups are reactive, and sometimes they need to be. Sometimes it's just like that last fight is like, now I'm done and I'm slamming the doors and I'm out of here, and I shouldn't have judgment for people that need to leave that way. But I think it's my own, if you think, I guess we all have our own values, right? And when you look at success or failure, I think for me the success is about integrity. Like, are you treating your partner the way that you feel is you showing up as your best self, whether it's making changes to heal and overcome difficulties, or whether it's deciding to work toward dissolution, and asking a third party for support with, how are you going to talk to your kids about it, and how are you going to talk to the neighbors about it. You can tell I'm pretty biased. Like, I do think,
No, it's back to the authenticity you were talking about. You don't want to make a couple feel like they have to stay together, at worst to keep Laura happy. Like, that's not good. You want you want people to come out of it doing, the best they can.
that's really funny. I would never yeah, that's an interesting reason to stay together, because Laura Silverstein wants to feel good about herself as a couples therapist.
She wants 100% thing on her website so she can say,
oh yeah, that's right. A testimonial.
We hate each other, but we're still together because Laura's
because of Laura.
Yeah. No, I know a couple who they got married quite young, and so even though they're in their mid-20s now, it's a very established relationship, a man and a woman, and she has come to terms with the fact that she's gay, and so they are splitting up, but they are seeing a couples therapist in order to have that process happen in the least toxic way possible. Because they love each other, they just can't be together in a relationship, and they don't want to. They're both sad and they're both hurting, and they don't want to hurt each other more than they have to.
I love the way you put that. They don't want to hurt each other more than they have to, right? There's suffering in the world, and then there's unnecessary suffering. Yeah. And if you can avoid unnecessary suffering during a breakup, there's a big argument for that being worthwhile.
Yeah.
And if you see that as a success, then you're more likely to enter a process with a third party to get the support that you need, so that you don't feel like you're signing up for a marathon when you've never run a mile, and that you're absolutely not gonna quote unquote win, or you're not gonna reach a goal.
Yeah, he feels hurt, she feels guilty. her family isn't being great about it. It's all very difficult. And they ultimately really like each other still.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to hate each other.
And I just commend them for hanging in there, and doing that anyway, when maybe they're getting mixed messages about the value in it,
Yeah.
because I agree with you. I also think there's things to learn, right? Like when we've been in a relationship, it's it's just a chapter of our life that we learned and grew, and we shared a certain part of our development with that person, and they did that for us as well. So there's really something to honoring that time,
Yeah.
and not in a way where like, oh, I'm learning from my mistakes so I don't do this again, but just like, oh, I'm learning, like, wow, like you taught me things, more like that,
Yeah.
like I am a different person because I met you, and I'm going to keep going. That's never that the way that you've changed me is, this is sounding really corny now as I'm talking, but I tend to be corny, like, just truth be told. Right. But I don't know. I'm a romantic at heart. It's like when somebody touches our heart and then it's no longer a romantic or a sexual relationship, we're still a new person because we've
Yeah.
been loved and we've loved that person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's been so useful and so helpful. As I think I told you when I emailed you, this topic was requested by a listener, and it's a topic that has been requested several times and not one that I felt equipped to cover myself. And you're just a font of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
I feel like we could just do this all day. I love talking to you. I love your questions, and I love how deeply you think about life and the world. You have so much nuance to how you see things. And I really, really, when I got your email, it's just like, yes, like, when can we do this? I'm in. I don't know if I read what the topic was, but I'm like, if you think I could talk about it, I could talk about it. I trust you.
You did reply within about 4 minutes, so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to find you online, if they want to find your books, where can they do all of that?
Oh, thank you for that offer. So my website is Laura, Laura Silverstein, silver like the metal, STEIN, .co, not .com, .co. So it's laurasilverstein.co, and that's got blogs and quizzes about like how to know if you should be in couples therapy, and then the book, there's a link there that you can buy the book. I have a workbook that you could buy the manuscript, or you can go to Amazon, and it's love is an action verb.
Which is a genius title.
Yeah, I mean, it is, right? It's just strikes me as so true. Like,
Yeah.
when we love somebody, we got to do stuff.
If you believe the fairy tales, it just happens and everything is perfect. And that's not how life works.
True. True.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you so much, and thanks to your listeners for sending in those great questions.
I hope you're finding this episode interesting. In order to help me continue bringing you content like this week after week, your support is crucial. This independent podcast wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. I pour my heart and soul into it, and I fund the podcast myself, from microphones to computer software to hosting costs. So I'm asking for your help if you can. Whether you can offer a one-off donation or you want to become a de-hoarding darling with a monthly contribution, any amount makes a huge difference. Find out more at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/donate. So shout out this week to the Got Clutter, Get Organised podcast, where guest Tracy McCubbin, who you may remember from 2 episodes of this podcast, is talking sense, as she pretty much always does. Have a listen.
Decluttering and organizing is an ongoing process. You don't do it once and it's done. It's happening. And if things get a little out of control, then tighten it back up again.
That is so true. Oh my goodness. I do that like at the end of the year. Oh, I have to because you got to get the paperwork, some of the clothes, some of the other stuff. It's like,
yeah, the gifts, the things that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's like you go through phases. It's like at one point, oh yeah, I want to keep this. But then you look at it, it's like, why? Why am I keeping this? So yeah, Tracy.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think that's for people is to understand, it's, somebody said it to me the other day. I was like, oh, my to-do list, like, when's it ever going to be done? And they're like, when you're dead, like you are always going to have a to-do list. And
yeah, that's the truth.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's just about managing your time and boundaries.
So I will link to Clutter Get Organised in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk and also to the 2 episodes that Tracy was in on this podcast. Okay, thank you for listening and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast.